Welcome to the Born for Greatness podcast. I am so excited. Today I have a very special guest, Hilary Geraghty. Hilary, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca. Pleasure to be
Yeah,
here.
I am so excited. We have lots to talk about today. But first, can you just start off, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am the owner of Tactical Reinsurance MGU. I joined the stop loss field about 10 years ago and slowly grew
Mhm.
into an ownership of an MGU. And it's been a journey. It's exciting,
I'm
it's busy,
sure.
it's a lot of responsibility, but I wouldn't want to do anything else.
That's amazing. So, what were you doing before that time? Have you always been into
Before
underwriting?
Kind of. So at one point, I had my real estate license, did that for a
Okay,
year. Before
awesome.
that, I was an underwriter for JG Wentworth, those commercials that you
Okay.
see about
Yep.
structured settlements. So
Hmm.
that was all interesting. It wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and I got the opportunity to join the industry through a family friend, and I haven't left.
That's awesome. I know people always say, like, no one is out there, as a child going, I want to get into insurance, which I think is pretty true. But it really is a great industry to be in, especially being in the health insurance side, because we have the opportunity to help people in such a unique way.
I agree, and it's growing every day, and it changes drastically every year. So it keeps you on your toes.
That is so true. Okay, so let's just dive right in and talk about I know for myself, and it's interesting that you say that you were in real estate because that's also my past. I was in the commercial side of things, but so I was in a male dominated industry then, still in a male dominated industry now. And I know you and I have talked previously just about kind of the challenges of working in a male dominated industry and how important female friendships and connections are when you're in that type of environment. Uh, Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on that.
Working in a male-dominated industry is unique. Um,
Hmm.
we'll scratch that part.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Working in the male-dominated industry is a little tough at times, but I do find that my strongest support system is within my close circle, which is mostly women. And I also
Mm,
find that my hardest critics are also women.
yes.
So I find that we have such a standard against men in the industry, and I feel
Hmm.
like we are more likely to scrutinize a woman and put ourselves in their shoes and think, I would have done it this way, I would have done it that way. But when I find a woman that I truly trust and she's in my circle, they're the ones I lean on a majority of the time and just trust with my whole heart. I know they have my best interest at heart, and I try to pick women and men also who I would trust my daughter with. So that's one
Oh,
of my
that's a great
benchmarks.
point.
Yes, it's one of my benchmarks. Would I be trusting, would I trust them with my daughter and willing, let them watch her, or just in
Mhm.
general trust them?
That's such a great point and something so important to think about. I mean, even outside of business, like, why do you think I've always like tried to kind of wrap my mind around, and I have different theories of why women are so uh, pitted against each other. I feel like we are pitted against each other from a young age. It's not just in adulthood. I feel like you find it pretty much middle school tends to be the start. What's your thought on that?
I think a big driver is jealousy. We are held to such high standards, and I feel like men get a pass all the time. So
Mhm.
we judge each other and we just have jealousy in our bones.
That's a really good point. Definitely. I'm the mother of three boys, and I always wanted all boys. So nothing, certainly love having boys, but it has been so interesting to see how they interact with each other and their male friendships. It's so different. Like they can beat up on each other and then be over it in 2 minutes. And it's such speaking of jealousy, I'm a little bit jealous that as women, we don't tend to forgive and forget as quickly as men do. I think that is one of their greatest strengths that they have, at least between their male relationships, which is really unique.
That's funny you say that. I speak with my husband about work all the time, and he'll
Hmm.
tell me about a conversation he had and a comment he made, or someone said to him, and they're best friends like 5 minutes later. I'm like, he wasn't mad at that? You're not mad at that? He's like, no, it's the truth. I'm like, okay, that's fair. I respect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's certainly some things that we could take and learn from that they do inside their friendships and just relationships as a whole. But okay, so let's talk about what do you think about being an owner of a company, that maybe some of your biggest challenges that you face, um, just in general. Let's start there.
Sure. By far, my biggest challenge is the work life, family life balance. So, one
Mm,
example, my daughter got hurt at school on Wednesday and she's 5. So, I had to pick her up Wednesday.
hmm
And then she had to stay home from school yesterday, but I went and dropped her off at my mother-in-law's. So,
mm,
that makes me feel bad. But
yeah.
I had calls that I could have rescheduled if I had to. I knew she was in great hands with my mother-in-law, but if I could just be there all the time, that's my biggest struggle. But then also, on the other hand, everything I do here is for her. So I hope to be a good example, and I strive for that every single day.
Yeah. And I think that we are women who work, moms who work. I think there is nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. There's nothing wrong with wanting to work. However, I think that working mothers, I've spoken to so many different ones, we all have this mom guilt that we carry. That's so not necessary, and we shouldn't have it, because I really do believe when our kids look back, they're going to be proud. And, we're going to be setting an example of what, hard work looks like and sacrifice looks like and all of those things. I'm sure clearly you've suffered with that whole mom guilt. I mean, is there anything in particular that you feel helps you with that?
Her future. I would love to be able to pay for her college, pay for a
Mm,
wedding, and just get her get her started on the right foot and not in debt and just make her dreams come true. I want to buy her a car when she's 16. So
oh.
that's the goal.
I love that. And that's such a good way to think about it. Changing sometimes our perspective on things really does help, just not to have that guilt weigh on us as much. Because again, I really feel like it's unnecessary guilt, because as long as you're trying your best in everything you do, then I think we're good. Now, as far as being a business owner, hiring employees, what are some of like the most important traits that you look for when hiring someone?
I feel the younger employees in the beginning, it's harder to train, but they don't have these habits that are just drilled into their brain and they're easier to mold
Mm,
into your views, what you do as a company. So I don't shy away from young employees as long as they have good work ethic. I also don't rely too much on a resume. So I
mm,
don't think anyone would submit a resume that looks bad. If it does, obviously that's an absolute, if you don't spend time on your resume, I'm not going to probably
right.
hire you, but I don't call references on a resume. I don't think anyone would put a reference that didn't like them on a resume. So
So true.
I don't hold too much weight to the resume. The experience part, of course, and a lot of the employees that I've had are through relationships. So recommendations from
Mm.
people I trust.
That is so true. And I think there's things as I've done a ton of hiring throughout my career as well, that you can't tell from a resume. You can't pick up certain traits and characteristics like integrity and hard work. Everybody says they're a hard worker, but those are things like you can't really tell. And some of that is relying on kind of gut instinct, or, like you said, referrals from friends or colleagues, I think is some of the best ways to hire, because you tend to, have some real experience, and especially like fellow colleagues. I've had a lot of people, make recommendations, and they've been open, like, hey, this is what this person's really great at. This is where they need to work, and do a little better at. And I feel like I've gotten more of that references from fellow colleagues than from a reference somebody puts on their resume.
Okay. And I appreciate the feedback that they need to work on. Otherwise, I don't feel like they're being honest. So let's have the hard
Yes.
conversations up front before I'm surprised 2 months down the road.
That is so true. Yeah, I think that hiring for they say a lot like you can train people like you said you don't tend to look at the resume as much like you can train people to do certain jobs you can't train character or those more important things. So is that how you feel across the board or is that more like when you're looking at entry level because it's easier to train entry level positions?
More across the board, a few years ago, I did hire someone with a very lengthy resume,
Hmm.
30 years of experience, and it was shocking. It was very shocking what they didn't know, what was a lie on the resume. So I I heavily rely on the recommendations, or if I've just worked with them in the industry in general. But
Hmm.
I do find when you're younger, it is easier to change your ways.
Yes, I agree. How about company culture? Do you feel like you hire for based upon company culture? Like, is that something important that you set out to do?
Absolutely. That I feel is a macro issue. So
Mm,
on a macro level, do we see eye to eye? Because the little issues, I don't care if we have disagreements, we can work through them, but high level, your values, what you appreciate in a company, I don't think there's good collaboration if your macro issues are not in line.
yes, that is so true. Do you think that there's maybe a specific challenge to being a female business owner in this industry or as a whole in general? Is there anything specific that you feel like you have to deal with that maybe others don't?
To an extent, but I also feel that there are benefits.
I agree. There's a lot of benefits.
There are, and women tend to work with women. We once we find the ones we trust, I'll always send a referral over to my women trusted,
Hmm.
friendships before a man.
Yeah.
When you do find those trusted relationships, you want to help each other, so you go out of your way more. And I feel like men, once they learn to trust you, they know that you can be trusted. So
Hmm.
men, I don't feel like they're as trustworthy as women. So once you get on the good side of a man, I feel they're more willing to trust us in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you have any advice for any young women in their careers who really want to be business owners at some point?
Just try to do the right thing all the time.
That's
So
really good.
try just to be a good person. I do believe in karma. It comes back to you. You don't want a
Mhm.
bad image in the industry. Always take the high road.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think sometimes we think taking the high road is going to have some form of consequence, even, sometimes in your career advancement. And I think oftentimes it might have a temporary by going against somebody by taking the high road, but in the end, I feel like it always works out to our advantage. And I very much agree with you on that. I think doing the right thing above all is always a win. You will always win in the end. So that's a really good point.
And if I take the high road and I keep my mouth shut, I not
Mhm.
often do I regret not saying something. So if
Yeah.
I speak and say something just through feelings, what I'm feeling at the moment, a lot of times I'll
Mhm.
regret it. So
Yeah.
I try to be a good person and it's worked so far.
Yeah, it's so true. So, what about I know that you have, some other people that you work with aren't and I don't want any men to be offended by our conversation. Men can be amazing assets and I think we need both men and women in the corporate world everywhere. Right? What are some of the benefits that you have experienced from working closely with male colleagues?
I've learned a lot from male colleagues. I feel like they've been in the industry longer, and I've learned that
Mm,
they'll tell you the truth no matter what.
that is so true. I wish as women we were less afraid to tell the truth and to help, because I think that's the biggest help we can give to one another, is to tell the truth, even when sometimes it hurts. Real friendships, I think, are it's a requirement. You have to be open and honest, and as long as it's done, with kindness, it really can be. It can be a very positive thing.
That's funny you say that. I heard on the news or something this morning a quote, and it really struck me. The best way to love someone is to tell the truth, and the best way to tell the truth is with love. I was like,
Oh, that is really good. I
I'm
like
gonna use
that.
that.
Yes, it's so true. And it's so hard. I think it's hard in general just to do, I mean, they call it constructive criticism. I don't love that that's called constructive criticism because I just don't like the way it sounds, but it is hard just in life in general, at work. It's always hard to tell somebody, like, this isn't working out, or this should be done differently, but there is a way to do it. I think, and it's been effective in my journey in leadership, is like gentle correction and then more encouraging and using moments to teach and to coach people versus to knock them down, because I see that a lot. I see that from men and women leaders, who really give employees a hard time and make them feel less than because they've made mistakes, where I feel like flipping that and using it as an opportunity for growth usually, has a much better outcome. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but
I wholeheartedly agree. I've worked for bosses in the past who were just so mean, and it made me leave the job. Like I didn't want to work for someone like that. I didn't want to be afraid of my job. And in my own experience as a boss, I never want someone to feel that way. I've never yelled at an employee, but I also on the flip side, I could be less cautious of their feelings or less aware of their feelings, trying not to hurt them. Because in the past, I've held things in because I didn't want to hurt them, but I'm learning
mm,
to well, not constructive criticism, but truthfully tell them with love.
yes, I like the way you said that. Because again, there's no other alternative for that constructive criticism. But I like the way you said that. That is so true, because I really think that we can. I mean, I've worked for bosses too, where you're so afraid to make a mistake, and then your work product isn't as good because you're constantly afraid of messing up. So I think that the leadership style and approach that it sounds like you're taking is so great, because it really does help grow and lead. And we need more female leaders. There are so many amazing, male leaders that have written great books on leadership, and there are less females. And so it's really nice to meet a fellow, female leader and just kind of bounce ideas off of each other and, watch each other grow. I think that's one of the greatest things that I've been able to witness and be a part of, is watching other female leaders rise and do awesome and incredible things. So,
I look forward
uh,
to staying in touch and seeing where we both go in the future.
yeah, absolutely. So, let's go back to talking about kind of your work journey and how you got into this industry. Is there anything that you would specifically say that you enjoy about this industry for somebody who might be contemplating? Like, again, I've heard about insurance. I've roughly heard about underwriting. Like, what is it that is your passion, that fires you up about what you do, that might spark some interest in somebody else?
I want to make a change in someone's life. So we, as a company, we strive to make health insurance as affordable as possible. Because someone, whether it's yourself, someone who's holding off getting a procedure or medication that they need because it's too expensive.
Hmm.
Every year, health insurance just increases well, well more than the average wage growth. That's not sustainable. And it hurts when you see someone struggling to get the health care they need. So I'm
Hmm.
hoping, even if it helps just one person, that's what I like. I also really appreciate that it's constantly changing. So in the mortgage industry with structured settlements, it was the same thing every day. I turned into a robot. Here,
Mm.
it keeps you on your toes. You're learning constantly. It's it keeps you young.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think too, at least for me, I found the health insurance industry to be so great because like you said, you are doing something to change lives every day. And I think when you think about what can I do that's going to make an impact on the world or help people? Let's just say, helping people's health. You think, okay, I should be a doctor, a surgeon. All you don't necessarily think about health insurance and what such it's I mean, it plays such an important role, especially in this country where it's out of control as far as pricing goes and makes it so hard for people. I've always said no one should ever have to choose between putting food on the table or getting treatment for their cancer. Like, we shouldn't be living in a world like that. So, I would have never thought when I was younger that this industry I could be a part of and have such an impact on people's lives. And so I think having that every day gives you like motivation. Like you said, it's kind of like it's a spark. It keeps you going. It's great to be passionate about what you do.
And the longer you're in the industry, the I find the angrier I get. There's so
Mm,
much waste. You see, they take advantage of the system, so many people. It's frustrating. So I hope to make a difference. I hope to make an impact.
absolutely. I think that first of all, you are already, the company you have built is doing great things. Can you just tell me a little bit more about what your company does?
Absolutely. We're a managing general underwriter, so we place reinsurance for self-insured companies.
Okay.
So so when you go to self-funding, typically you get stop loss. Our bread and butter, we try to target the groups that 10 other carriers have declined, where they have no other solution because it's such a bad group. So I like to target the hard groups and really,
Mm,
really make a difference. So as long as they're willing to change, which at this point they have to, change
yes,
is
so
not
true.
comfortable. Change isn't comfortable, but that's where growth is in change. So
Mhm.
I find the best opportunities are the groups that nobody else wants, and they're willing to make a change, and that's where I seem to make the biggest difference.
That's awesome. Is there a particular size group that you work with?
Our average group size is about 100 to 500 lives. We go down to 25. We can go below that depending if it's a block. But right now we're creating a program for a consortium model. So it's a captive alternative. So it's cheaper than a captive. It's much quicker speed to market. You, it's a block pricing mechanism, and captives right now in the industry are rapidly growing, and a lot of people want to be in a captive but don't have the funds. So again, we're trying to make a difference and make it easier for companies. So we are
Mhm.
creating this virtual captive model.
Awesome. For all of the listeners who are not familiar with insurance, can you explain what a captive is?
A captive is a risk model where the the groups take risk on the entire block. So it's closer to fully insured. It's a large number of groups in a block under a captive. So everybody's taking risk on each other, but with more lives, you can spread out the risk. There's more sustainability. So if one year a group has a bad year, they don't get killed on renewal because their risk is spread out amongst many different groups.
That is very helpful. I know for me, when I first came into the industry, it was a lot of terms to learn. So, very helpful. It's amazing what you're doing, what you've created. Um, Again, being able to help people in this way is just fantastic. And again, excited to see where you go. So thank you so much for joining me. If somebody has a question, is interested in what you do, how can someone get a hold of you?
They could email me or call me. My cell phone's 267-893-0425, or they could just reach out to my email. It's hilary.geraghty@tacticalreinsurance.com, and I can send you that information if we wanted to add it to the link.
Absolutely, I will do that. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was wonderful having you on, and thank you again.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.